Storied Lives is a dynamic community that has been cultivated and designed intentionally to address the unspoken stories within Black communities. This work was built on the foundational understanding that our stories matter and are worthy of being told and celebrated. While Black culture underpins so many of the stories that we consume in media, music, fashion, and the arts, our own personal narratives are so often hidden or dismissed or lost to time. The suppression of Black stories happened by design. When Black bodies were bought and sold in markets, the familial and communal stories that made up a history that was separate from that of colonial violence perished. Black identity was restructured and whitewashed to serve the purposes of a system designed to deny humanity and groom people for lives solely defined by servitude. The collective Black story became disjointed, a patchwork of moments that were silently held out of fear. And yet, our ancestors found a way. They developed songs and created artifacts that could carry their stories forward. These songs and artifacts have carried through to our continued movements for equality, and they inform the way that we're able to navigate the hostility of a world that still largely fears and rejects Blackness. So, we have a framework for understanding the ways in which creative practices and the intentional development and sharing of stories can create spaces of healing. The Negro spirituals born out of antebellum violence became theme songs for the fight for freedom during the movement for civil rights. Scraps of clothing and bedding became quilted tapestries that held the stories of both the quilter and their community. Poetry, in all its forms, kept us connected to our world and helped us understand our place in it. What we've created here isn't new. It's a reimagining of that which has already been imagined, that the stories that make up our lives are complex, relational, rooted in the environment in which we exist, and important, so important, to our well-being. This community pulls from the learnings of our past to design the future that we want to see, while also acknowledging the ways in which past traumas can continue to manifest for future generations. Storied Lives seeks to create space for conversations and personal reflections that can address relational and personal tension and conflict. We create an intentional, safe environment for developing and sharing the stories that we choose to contemplate and celebrate. The design of this community was intentional. Through months of background and historical research, surveys, data collection, personal conversations, and reflections on trauma-informed healing practices, the concept developed from an intimate workshop to a larger-scale community project that addresses the various ways that folks choose to process their stories. In workshops, we focus on specific creative reflections to unlock stories around identity and environmental and familial tensions. Through tactile or digital craft making, we explore ways to acknowledge and either embrace or release the narratives that we do not wish to define us. We create narratives around the masks we wear in order to flow through our personal and professional lives. We consider the impact of collective knowledge and ritual on our relationships to ourselves and our families. We investigate how our stories have historically been passed down and how we hope to pass them down to future generations. We reflect on the meaning of tradition. This community also creates space for individual reflection. Through storiedlives.org, people have created and submitted pieces for a virtual community quilt that is a living document and pays homage to the quilting traditions of our ancestral family. The impact of this work is personal and ongoing. Workshops open participants up to beginning to think about how to work through familial tensions and difficult personal narratives. We create space for in-the-moment reflection as well as ongoing processing. Post-workshop resources provide guidance and continued individual reflection. This process addresses social design on a personal and communal level. We're tackling issues that exist mostly below the surface, yet attached to and influence many other spheres of life. In this way, it differs a bit from what might be a typical social design process, but the ultimate goal and theory of change is threefold. Enable individuals to create stories that address personal challenges, enable families to communicate more effectively, and create an environment where those learnings can be internalized and passed through to future generations. We're not focused on a measurable end goal, but rather developing an ongoing path to generational healing.